Amateurs. What's up next is Titles, Talk, and Tipples with your hostess with the mostest, Jude Madeline Hall. She is going to be chatting with an author, poet, A.A. Rubin, as well as the maniacal minds behind Poe movies, Season and Thad Chickanowski, and also 6 Degrees of Poe, created by Carmen Boulder and Jeannie Smith. Sit back and enjoy. We are.
Hi, my name is Jude Madeline Hall, and this is Titles, Talk, and Tipples. With me tonight are some very awesome Gothic people we are all celebrating Edgar Allan Poe's 215th birthday this year. And so though it happened on January 19th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to make sure. We're still celebrating because a bunch of us celebrate Poe all year round. With me is A.A. Rubin. Ari Rubin, he is a Gothic he is an author and poet specializing in Gothic literature, yeah?
That's one of the things I write. Yeah, I write a lot of Gothic, I write a lot of poetry, but I have a wide range of genres and mediums, ranging from comics to formal poetry.
Fantastic.
Of which much of the formal poetry is Gothic.
Nice. And we've got Carmen and Jeannie from 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. It's a podcast, or should I say a podcast?
Yes. We always say podcast. Sometimes we say podcast kind of interchangeably.
Yeah, just so people know what you're talking about, right?
Yes,
You
absolutely.
didn't make a mistake.
Yes.
And we have Thad and Season from the Poe movies. And you guys actually make movies from Poe's stories.
Yep. Yeah.
Great.
Adaptations as true to the story as we can possibly.
Yes, and you guys have won 2 Emmys for your films, as well as a Visitor Award for the Poe International Poe Festival.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you won an award for first place in a poetry contest that 6 Degrees of Poe, Edgar Allan Poe put on.
Yes.
That is.
And 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, you're celebrating or about to go into your 3rd season.
Yes. Or we're in it right now.
You're in it.
Right now. Yes. It's exciting.
All right. So let's raise a glass. And just tell the viewers what we're drinking. I didn't have a martini glass, but I did follow 6 Degrees of Poe's recipe for what is it called? Manhattan.
The Manhattan in the Crowd. Yes.
Manhattan in the Crowd, rye whiskey,
London dry gin.
And bitters.
Yes.
And so go ahead and let's share what we're drinking. What are you guys drinking?
Water. We're both sober.
Liquid ice.
Yeah.
Liquid ice, okay.
Health reasons we both have to be sober.
I got some 21-year-old single malt scotch.
Okay.
Oh,
Nice.
Who's the maker? Who's
The Balvenie
Oh
poem.
yeah, I love
Nice.
Balvenie.
Oh, Ari, that's one of my favorites.
It's actually,
That's
that
what
is
I'm
my,
Yeah, I bought that when my son was born. I had that bottle
yes.
for when he was born and
Oh,
downed it.
Yeah.
Didn't tastefully, but
That's
yeah.
one of my favorites. My wife gets me a bottle every year, actually on Christmas Eve, and I try to make it last till the next year.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna be buying
And how
that
old is
every
that
year.
one?
This one was just from this year. This one was from December. It's
Okay.
my
Oh,
annual.
but it's
Oh,
a
it's 21. It's a 21-year-old Scotch,
21-year-old Scotch.
aged in port butts,
Right,
port
yeah.
barrels.
Yeah, I usually get the 16-year-old Balvenie, but yeah,
They're good too. I like all of
wonderful.
them are good.
Really good.
All of
Yeah.
them good.
The
I like
21 is really nice. It's so
Yep.
smooth.
it is the port barrels really makes it soft and it rounds it out.
Very
Yeah.
good.
And it's a good I find it's a good literature Scotch. It's nice for sitting, actually in a place that looks like what you have with the leather chair and the fireplace.
Yeah.
You can't see my fireplace. It's out of frame right now, but it's right next to the ingle nook over here.
Yeah, very nice.
nice.
And Carmen and Jeannie, what are you sipping on? I love
So-
your cup.
Oh, thank you. This mug came from a place in Atlanta called the Vortex.
Oh,
And this is called the Eye of the Skull from the Gold Bug. And if you can see, there's a little gold bug about to go
yeah.
through the eye. And so my husband mixed it up for me tonight before the show. And it has lemon juice, Demerara simple syrup, aged Dominican rum, Clement Creole shrub, allspice dram, and strongly brewed peach tea.
Oh.
And so this is one of our recipes that we're working on for our upcoming book based on Poe's poetry, short stories, you name it. And so
And I'm
thank you
just
for
straight up
doing.
caffeinated.
You're
I'm just
Yes.
drinking caffeine, so
Oh,
I
you're
can't.
just drinking caffeine.
Yeah, I
Mine-
can't. I was gonna make myself a drink because I was actually gonna break out my mead, or I was gonna do a mimosa, but I was like, no, I better have the caffeine, or I may not be lasting through this. Sorry.
You might fall asleep during
Yeah,
the interview.
yeah. I've had a rough weekend with migraine, so I'm
Oh,
trying to stay focused and stay caffeinated. So that's
well,
me.
I
Sorry,
thought
Poe.
I had the stomach flu, but
Oh.
I actually got a new tattoo a couple days ago, and it was a really difficult tattoo to get. And so I think I was actually just experiencing, my tattoo artist was like, yeah, you can totally experience like nausea and stomach issues. I was like, it's never
Ooh.
happened before, but it was difficult to get. So I think that's what it was, because it's gone now. And it's like,
Yeah,
well, that
and
didn't
sometimes it's the
last.
ink.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes the
Weird.
ink mixture with the blood can
Yeah.
cause those kinds of reactions.
Yeah, I never got sick from a tattoo before, but that might have been what it
Wow.
was, or might have
Yeah.
been a little.
Knock on wood, thankfully I
little
haven't
bug.
either,
Yes.
but I've
Woohoo.
heard of it. So
Glad you're feeling better.
Thank you very much. So let's do a toast, and this toast, you might recognize it, but don't say what it don't tell the translation yet. We're going to do that later in the show, but we'll raise our glass to Edgar Allan Poe. Dictandum felici condintur reliquiae.
Salud.
Cheers.
Salud.
Mm.
Yes.
All right, so A.A. Rubin, let's start with you. You are published in those lovely books behind you, Love Letters to Poe. You and I actually share that we're both published in volume 1. Are you published in more than that?
Yes, I'm in volume 1, volume 2, and the upcoming volume 3. I have a poem in each one of them.
A poem, nice, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you see next to it, I also have my own collection of Gothic poetry
Yes,
as
very
well. But yes, we were in that first one together.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And you wrote The Widow's Walk,
The Widow's Walk,
which
yes.
audience, you'll get to hear that later in the show. Is there anything you'd like to share about that piece?
Yeah, that one was interesting. When I first moved to Long Island, I lived in New York City for a long time. Um, and when I first moved to Long Island, especially in the neighborhood where I live, there were a lot of these old Gothic houses that were built in the a little bit after Poe. They were built in the 1870s mostly, some in the 1860s, but they all have this kind of feature, especially on the North Shore over here, where there's a fence on top of the roof. It's like you have a porch, but it's on top of your roof. And they're called widows' walks. And what they actually are the whaling was the big industry in the 19th century in the entire country, especially in the Northeast, and especially on Long Island, had a bunch of major whaling ports. We were actually at the Cold Spring Harbor Whaling Museum today. They had an event for kids.
Okay.
And I was kind of fascinated. I love the old houses, the old Gothic architecture, that kind of thing. My house doesn't have one. Mine was from the 1930s. It's a little later, but there are some of them with them. And I would ask around, what were they? And what they actually are is that when the sailors were out at sea, the their wives were supposed to stand on top of the roofs, and they would look out to sea, waiting to see the ships if the ships were returning. And you could see out to the thing, and that's why it's called the Widow's Walk, because many of them, it's a dangerous industry. Many of them passed away at sea.
Okay.
And then you could think of like and often they wouldn't know, because you're going to get mail from, the ship might come back before you get any word of what happened. So that's what the widow walks really were. I heard all sorts of other things about them,
Mhm.
that they wouldn't let the widows, like if you were a widow, they wouldn't let you into town by yourself. You weren't allowed to go to church, whatever, all these different stories that are all patently false,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
they make a better story.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
and I kind of took a bunch of the things that I heard and combined it with some gothy things, and I made a poem about it. And you know, as a writer of gothic poetry, it's a limited market,
Yeah.
shall we say. You can put it out yourself, but everybody, rhyming poetry, metered poetry, it's harder to sell these days. Everybody wants free verse,
Sure.
these types of things. And I saw, I happened to stumble across Sarah's call, and it had actually, at that point, I think the call had just said for short fiction.
Mhm.
And I had written this really, really gothic thing, and I contacted her through, whatever email or whatever that was on there. And I said, would you consider poetry?
Yeah.
And she did. So I submitted it, and that really, brought me into this whole community here. It's where
Nice.
I've met pretty much all of you through Poe stuff. You know,
Yeah,
um,
and you guys have all met
yeah.
before, so this is the first time I'm meeting you guys. And so any collaborations that you guys have done besides being on 6 Degrees of Poe, right? Was that
Going
where?
on 6 Degrees of Poe
Yes.
next week, right?
Oh,
Next
okay.
week or the
Yes.
week after? Yeah, next week. So
Yeah.
I will be on next week. I met with guys at Poe Movies at the Visitor Awards last year. My
Okay.
book was up for the award. I didn't win. They won.
Oh yeah, the book
Different
one.
category, but yeah, they won. But I met them both at the festival and at the what they call it, the Black Cap Ball
Right. Yeah.
there. So we've met through that. Yeah.
So well, that's a good transfer to Carmen and Thad of Poe Movies. Um, I've been a fan of your guys's since before Bad Juju and J Bone Presents. So I'm super excited to be talking to you. And I realized you were the same people as channel I've been following. I was kind of little geeked out, but I've calmed
cool.
down by then. But how long have you guys been making Poe movies?
Well, the first one we made was in 2011,
Okay.
Pascal Amontillado. So that that kind of started from. So I'm in the mostly in the commercial industry, but sort of have like one foot in the film industry. A lot of people I work with work on features, and I haven't really worked on a feature in many years. But so a friend of mine had got a new camera. It was a red. People that know cameras will know what that is. And when that kind of first came out, he's like, "Hey, I got this. Let's go. Let me know if you want to shoot something." So we shot some little test thing, and then I was like, "Hey, I want to really want to make the Cask of Amontillado into film. Would you be down?" He's like, "Yeah." So we just cobbled together any resources that we could get and found some places to shoot, found some actors, and then we made that film.
Oh.
And we wound up, what we did was kind of like a twist of it was we just were like, hey, why don't we, instead of just having this sit on a shelf, let's see if we can get this in schools. So we were able to connect with a couple different educational distributors, and they liked it, so they took it. It's kind of funny, like I liked Poe. I've always kind of thought Poe was pretty cool. I liked that story, the Cask of Amontillado. I always thought it was a pretty trippy story.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really, I think in making that film, I kind of became a Poe fan, because what you do is as you make a film or any kind of a project, you kind of have to dive into the author a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. And I remember I hurt my back or my neck really bad, and I was like on Vicodin while I was writing the script, and I was thought, oh wow, this is cool, because at the time I thought Poe was an opium addict, which of course you learn that was not really true, so I kind of learned a lot about Poe. I kind of became a Poe fan, and we started reaching out to the museums. We got connected with them. The Cask of Amontillado won an Emmy, so we got some grant money to make The Raven. The Raven did well, as also did well. That one won an Emmy, and then so
You had 2 nominations too.
yeah, it had a couple other nominations. It was a one for educational film, but it also was nominated for editing and original music score.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And then we made Telltale Heart just recently. That was like 2 years ago almost.
Yeah.
It really goes fast.
So if you weren't a Poe fan to begin with, how did you decide on the Cask of Amontillado to be your first film?
Because I read it in high school, and I always thought it was a good story. It was really, I just, like I said, I just was thinking of something cool to make.
Mm-hmm.
Because I had a friend who was off.
Well, we've lost your sound. Don't know what happened. Yeah, will you guys talk? Let's see, make sure it's not on my end.
Okay, yeah, because my
Oh,
screen.
there you go.
Okay, our screen is gone every time I talk. So. All right,
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
on my end, you guys are breaking up a little bit. Not
Okay.
sound, but the picture is. So it's
okay.
just stalling. But the sound will still get through, I think.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like we have full
Zoom,
signal.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, it is what it is, right?
Right.
So I mean, it was just sort of, I liked the story. I thought it'd be really cool. So I thought there were some cool elements.
Yeah.
If it wasn't Poe, it would have been something else.
Right.
But diving into it, I really kind of got a love for Poe, and my wife, being the English and literature nerd that she is, kind of was right there with me.
Well,
I was
also,
just
it's
about
like,
to ask Season, how did you
yeah, I
get
mean, like
involved?
after he made that, I was like, when I used to teach, we never had anything good to teach with. I love Roger Corman, but you can't use his movies in the class. Like,
Right.
you just can't. Like, there was never an adaptation where it was like, hey, we're going to read this and now we're going to watch this.
Oh,
There
right,
was
because it
nothing
didn't
like
line
that.
up. Yeah.
Nothing did, because everything, and I mean, we try to make them short because the stories are short. So
Mhm.
like, why would you make a 2-hour movie or an hour and a half feature-length movie off of a 3-page story? Like, Poe didn't seem to think it needed to be,
Yeah.
60 pages. So we're like, So as it gone on, as our project's gone on, because I have an education background, I mean, it was a while ago I quit teaching because there's lots of reasons for that, but I never stopped having a mind for educating people. I've just moved it towards what we're doing now with our project. So I realized like, so what we do now is like make the films, but we also have all the other things that we do that we tie in so that we can give teachers and Poe lovers kind of have to have our feet in both worlds. We want to make Poe fans happy because we're Poe fans. So we figure if we make ourselves happy, we'll make everyone else happy.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's also like, I more than ever, we need good quality educational content that's video format for kids.
Mhm.
So we try and do both things, like make films, but also have all the content that we make as well. And it's for me, it's been like really fun because I get to write scripts and I get to figure out like how to teach stuff, and our kids are involved with it, and they're excited about it too, and they're just like Poe nerds. They set other kids
That's great.
straight now. They just know Poe so well that like when kids say things that they know are dumb, they're like, no, that's wrong. He was not a drug addict, or no, that's not true. He actually died when he was young. Or I've heard them straighten
40,
out.
right? He
So
died when
it's
he was 40.
yeah. So that's pretty much, I mean, that's it. And like, we're working on our next film, and it's,
Can you share what your next film is?
it's the Black
Well,
Cat,
we
hopefully.
have several, we
Oh,
have several.
okay.
But
Yeah.
more Black Cat is the one we would like to make next.
Oh, nice. Hold on. I'm sorry. My lighting gets really
Okay. Sure.
funky. It's just like I can't see you guys. Okay, there we go.
And every time we do this, it gets significantly upped in terms of budget and resources. So we all of us, all the people that work on the crew, we all kind of know each other and
Mhm.
work together. The producer on this, the my other partner in the film part of this, Joe, him and I have known each other since we were about 6 years old.
Okay.
And
How old are your kids?
they're
that are-
16, 14, and 11.
Oh, that's great. And they're all involved. That's awesome.
They're all involved. So that like, so that's sort of ballooned into like, so what we do in between the films is we're very active on our social media, but especially our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we do a lot of educational stuff. It's not just Poe, like it's
Sure.
sort of structured around that. So we'll have a lot of Victorian stuff, a lot of Gothic stuff. So our sort of nomenclature is history, literature, cinema. So it's anything involving that. So we'll do like if somebody does a Poe related thing on Netflix or something, we might do a breakdown on it, and we might
Oh, yeah.
do, we're doing the history of Valentine's Day.
Cool. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
gonna be released soon.
It's
That's good.
it's
That's
like
funny.
anything history, literature, cinema related is
Okay.
what we kind of dive into, and the anchor points of those being the films.
Right. Okay.
So that's like
great.
what we want to do the most. We have the most fun. It's nice because we're all there, like all of us, all three of our kids and season, we were all on the set for Telltale, and it was really, really nice. It was a big I don't know, it was 20 people, 20,
Oh, okay.
25
So
crew.
pretty big crew.
I mean, for a film, that's pretty small, but it's.
Oh,
it's
yeah, but
well,
for my Bad Juju and J-Bone presents 2 people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Every
when we
once
do
in
our
a
YouTube,
while, we'll grab a third and be like, will you hold the camera and just zoom in? Because we
Yeah.
don't want to do digital zooming.
when we do the YouTube channel, it's like 3 of us.
Right.
It's not like it's not big in that regard. But when you do the films, I mean, they have to be done a certain way, and you need
You need a crew.
you need yeah. So we have to find money to pay everybody.
Oh, yeah. You want to pay people.
You need all your ducks in a row. You need insurance. You need everything.
Yeah.
So we get all that taken care of, and then we have a really nice production, and people have fun with it, and you find out that a lot of people, like even just people on the set, it kind of inspires them to go read it.
Yeah, that's great.
And
I would, if I were a producer, I would require it.
Yeah.
So how about 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe? I am guessing because it's a podcast and there are two of you here that maybe you have a tiny crew too.
We do. It's me, Jeannie, and sometimes my husband who helps us with some things. And he's done some filming for us.
Okay.
He's done some techno stuff for us. And he's also supporter and travels me around the country to find Poe connections and gives Jeannie a hard time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you need
That's his
given a hard
life's work
time,
right there.
Jeannie? Is that how it works? Do you need
Yeah.
given a hard time?
Apparently, everybody thinks I need to have, be given a hard time, all the way from people we've met through the Poe connections. I know a few others, they're like, yeah, and I'm like, look, I'm just being me. I don't know what you're talking about. But yeah, Jeff definitely he likes to give me a hard time. Carmen likes to give me a hard time. My other friends like to I don't know what's wrong. I'm such a nice, wonderful person, and these people want to give me such a hard time.
Let me
anyway.
say though, she gives it right back.
I was gonna say I
do.
have a sneaky suspicion that
Yes.
I don't know, maybe it's the cat ears, maybe it's the dark
It is.
background, but I have a feeling you give the hard time right back.
Yeah.
I do very much so. I mean, what's the fun of life if you can't have that banter, can't give that give and take, especially trying to make it fun, because as I mentioned earlier on, I am a retired teacher, and I taught everything from literature to science to history to math, pretty much everything across the spectrum. And
theater.
some of it was better.
Okay.
Yes, I was a theater teacher and a theater coach for many years, but it is like Season and Dad said, there's not a lot of stuff out there that you can not only offer to the kids as supplemental, but things that'll hold their attention. An hour and a half movie will not hold their attention, especially if they've already had to read something that was more than one page long.
Yes.
And so, but getting something that is entertaining, number one, can give them some background information to make them not so much fall in love with Poe, but to understand from a different aspect that he's more than just somebody who put words on paper.
Oh, sure.
And you got to give them that connection. And to find out that they might have had something in common with Poe and what he went on with his life. He loved that dark goth side. We still have the emos, the goths, those types of cliques that are still around.
Hopefully those goths have read Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh, absolutely.
They
imagine
have.
Yeah.
I currently still teach freshman English.
Okay.
And I have some students that I had last year that came up to me, I'd say within every other day for about 3 weeks, have you finished The Fall of the House of Usher on Netflix? And they were like, I'm going to go back and reread this and that. And
very cool.
we did Annabelle Lee together and Dream Within a Dream. And because freshman English doesn't get any short stories. And so it made my heart Poe full, because they were so excited to know what do I think of it and to have a conversation with them. So
how did your show come about? And tell us a little bit about it. So we haven't heard about it. We'll just pretend, those of us who know, just pretend that we don't.
Okay. So it came about, Jeannie and I, both love Poe. We always have. Both of us liked Poe from a very young age. We started talking about like what poems or stories we first got hooked in. And it's like, hey, Poe's more than just horror. He's more than poetry. He's science or science fiction, surrealism, all these things, all of the degrees that we revolve around within that 6 degrees. And so we kind of just came up with the name of the 6 degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, because when you start looking at his influences on so many things, you don't even realize there are things out there that we find, and it's like, wow, Poe had an influence on that. So we kind of took the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon and kind of morphed that into the 6 degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. And then When you bring Kevin Bacon in, you have his show, The Following, that had that cult serial killer that was obsessed with Poe. He was an English professor, so it all ties in together. So
And I
our
would
goal is
think
to get Kevin Bacon on here.
there you go. And I would think that like Poe is further reaching than Kevin Bacon,
Yes.
that being that 215 years and we're still sitting around talking about Poe.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
I don't know if in 215 years people will be talking about Kevin Bacon. What do you guys think?
I don't
Go
know.
either
He
way.
still serenades his llamas and his goats, so that's
That's
probably what's
true.
gonna
Oh,
And-
that's
that's
probably what's
probably
gonna
what will
follow him along the
that's what
way.
people will know
But
about him.
Well,
yeah,
Footloose
but
was a
the
hell
6
of a
degrees
movie.
of
That what
yeah, the
was
6 degrees of Poe.
Footloose.
Sorry, what Dad?
Footloose. 2 words
Yeah,
for you.
Footloose.
Yes, they will be
Yes.
talking
Yeah,
about him.
that's
Yes.
his
Did you say
that's
2
his
words? I
moniker.
thought
He's
That,
done
Footloose was 1
he's done
word.
a good job of like, leaning
yes.
into who he is. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
like he did in that last, what was it, in the Guardians of the Galaxy special,
was
where it's just
just
like,
thinking
Yes.
that.
The
like
Christmas
he's
special,
like
yes.
he's okay with making fun of himself, so
Yes.
Yeah.
that'll
Yes.
go a long way for him too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's
Jeannie,
apparently across space and time too,
Yeah, so
considering he was in
they-
Guardians and Galaxy and he's still there. So,
Ah.
Yeah.
um,
There you go.
Jeannie,
But-
did I cover everything? Do you think?
well, to some extent, yeah. We decided that
beginning, the beginning.
we just started as a podcast. That's pretty much it. Where mostly Carmen says, "Oh, we need to do a podcast," and I said, "Okay," and she's like, "Oh, and you need to do it with me," and I'm like, "Okay."
Mm.
So, yeah, I'm Carmen and I met because we were, she was my assistant principal when I was a teacher, so that's kind of how that started. So I was good at being told what to do by her because she was my boss at work, So I was like, yeah, okay, so now you're going to help me with the podcast. I'm like, all right, there we go. No, but no, it is the truth that we both have a love of Poe. We both love anything dealing with history because we have that in common with Season and Thad and everything. I was a goth when I was younger, so that's how I kind of got into the Poe.
I think you
You
still
know.
are.
I am. So I'm trying not to, okay, I'm just gonna own it. I'm an adult goth. Okay.
Yep,
But anyway,
that's okay. That's good.
so, but no, our podcast started out with just our normal 6 degrees, and then we can thankfully say that just in the past 3 seasons, we have grown between adding in interviews, like we had Thad and Season on, and introducing the world to their Poe movies, and they got to, share with us what they do and the people they get to meet, and then we started a poet
yeah.
like Poe poetry contest
Mhm.
last year, and that's how we ended up getting Ari, is he won our contest, and then
Yes.
that led us into
He's going to be a
Sarah.
judge this year.
Yeah, he's going to be a judge for us this year.
Oh,
And
cool.
Thad
And then
and Season are as
Sarah
well.
Procol
Yes.
Smith,
Mhm.
Carmen had actually met at the International Poe Fest. So
Mhm.
through all the networking, we've expanded to where we not only have a podcast, but we have a YouTube channel, and we also have a monthly book club. And I
Unbook
call
club.
it unbook club because we don't treat it as a regular book club. It's mostly we pick one of Poe's poems, his short stories, his
yeah.
anything, but we look at it from a different point of view. We have people that bring in things of we talk about the religion that he introduces into his works, and whether was he truly religious, or was it just the time of the culture of his time, his era, where he grew up.
Yeah, Jeannie,
Yeah.
that's actually segueing into into our next section. So I'm gonna go ahead and
Sorry.
stop you. No, that's okay. I
No,
want
no.
you to keep that in mind. I want you're gonna kind of have to start that statement over if you don't.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. But I'm gonna go ahead and do a little I don't know what
Break.
segue.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, folks. So we are here with 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, A.A. Rubin, author and poet, and Thad and Season of Poe movies. Don't go into the dark alone. We'll be right back. And we're back. And we're going to start delving into some deeper aspects of Poe's writing. So Jeannie, I'd love if you took off from where you were talking about, was Poe religious? And this is the time where we can start. So Season's stepping out, I believe, and she'll be back.
She's gonna she'll be back in 2 minutes.
Okay.
She's gonna
So,
open
and
the
this is
conference.
also where I would like to explode some Poe myths. I know we won't be able to get to all of them, but I want people to yeah, let's talk about some of the myths surrounding him and get the truth out there. So Jeannie, yes, please continue.
Well, as I was saying, that we like to discuss how he would introduce some religion into some of his stories. So we would discuss did he have a religious background, which, with all of us, and especially that time period, me growing up in the South, we all had some temple of some religion into our families. But we always think that Poe always likes to bring in the ideas, but then he never really solidifies whether he's truly religious or if he's just a follower of that particular concept. Because I don't think we've ever found any kind of information of where he was an avid Sunday churchgoer, whether he was actually a member of any kind of denomination. I know that he was born into theater with his parents. That was their major,
Yeah, I think
occupation.
what were they? And the evangelical or something like that. I don't know.
I think
read
so.
something.
I'm not sure. See, that's one
But
of those. That's one of those mysteries things of where you know that during the culture and the history of the time when he was born in Boston, especially Massachusetts, always had a Puritan pilgrim influence of that, of that religion, city on a hill type of thing. But you don't really know. Yeah, puritanical is what I would say it, because Salem witch trials and those kinds of things. But we would never discuss whether he was truly religious. We just discuss how he would bring it into his writing, how he would discuss of a devil, of,
right.
higher power, of those kinds of things. Because one of his actual stories is called "Never Bet the Devil Your Head." So it's those kinds of things.
And he
So
also
we
did
just discuss.
satire and
Yes.
Well,
comedy, and I think sometimes people don't get that. That
Oh,
sometimes he was being
absolutely.
Very true.
satirical,
Yeah, they don't understand that. Sorry, go ahead, Thad.
Yeah,
Oh, it was that I couldn't.
So just on a couple of thoughts of that from what I know about him, I don't he didn't write much about organized religion, but he was baptized. He was in a Presbyterian church.
That's right.
And he was, the Allens did attend church. He would have went with them. And he clearly understood, not just understood scriptural references, and like in the Raven, when he refers to the balm of Gilead, if you understand that reference, it's a healing. It is so incredibly appropriate for that moment in the poem, that he does understand it, and some of the concepts in the Black Cat revolving around perversion, the concepts of perversion that are in. He clearly understood those religious motifs. But there's nothing that he wrote that was like super. As far as I know, he wasn't very into organized religion or had much of a concern for it, but he was very educated on it, and he certainly understood the meaning behind a lot of them, especially in the Raven. And if you notice in the Raven, he compares, he throws around a lot of concepts, but they're pagan concepts as well as Christian concepts. And when he's speaking of it, he's very particular when he talks about pagan references and when he talks about Christian references. They're sort of separated. So when he talks about the Raven is kind of like, okay, this sort of demon-like or angel-like creature, and when he talks about Lenore, he's talking about sort of biblical Christian scriptural,
more heavenly.
And
Yeah,
that's
so there's like a separation there. But he doesn't. There's nothing. He didn't write a treatise on it, like on what he thought about it. But you can kind of gather that, and you kind of know what he knew about the Allens, because even though he's born in Boston, he was really raised by probably more Francis Allen than John Allen, because he was probably
And he lived in the United
Thank you,
Kingdom for a
girls. Yeah,
while
but
and went to
yeah.
school there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Ari, you were gonna.
Yeah.
I saw you.
Yeah, I was
You were
gonna
gonna say
also
something.
say that you know, I was also an English teacher once upon a time.
Oh gosh.
And I'm
So
also a former teacher.
all
And
of you were like,
also one of the things, actually going back what Susan said about the stories being short, because this conversation has reminded me about it too, was that Poe was a huge champion of the short story. He loved that you had the reader for the entire thing. So it's
Yeah.
like Aristotle's concept of the unity of action and things like that. It exists in a poem and it exists in a short story because you're going to read it beginning to end, um, as opposed to a novel, which you're going to read some of it, you're going to put down and the spell is broken and you have to move on. So I was thinking about that because also, in addition to having short movie, in addition to being a teacher and being able to show it in one class period, which is another thing that you can't do for an hour and a half movies,
Right.
when he was writing about short stories and his criticism, one of the authors that he really liked and that was influential on him was Nathaniel Hawthorne.
Yeah.
And if you read Nathaniel Hawthorne short stories, there's a lot of that Boston religion going on, like in Young Goodman Brown or Rappaccini's Daughter or things like that. So even within his literary tradition, so I don't know as much about his personal background, his history and stuff, but in terms of his literary traditions, I think about that. I think about the Nathaniel Hawthorne stuff that he was clearly involved in, that he was involved. His criticism was one of the things that helped bring Hawthorne to real prominence. It was one of the things that really started bringing the short story genre to life. And think about, especially Young Goodman Brown is probably the most famous example. The guy goes into the forest and sees all the Puritans are really worshiping the devil and things like that. And you can imagine Poe reading this and learning how to learning how to do it and incorporating those ideas. I also think from a poetic point of view, when you think of him, I always think of Poe kind of and I've seen him classified here sort of in the romantic tradition, the capital R romantic tradition, not
yeah.
like that there are romantic elements where he's writing about various loves in a romantic love kind of way, but in the capital R romantic, he has a lot in common with some of the British romantics. When I read his poetry, it's similar to some of Coleridge's stuff or Byron or Blake or these types of things. And they had definitely a religious bent to their poetry, but it wasn't an organized religious. They
Yeah,
found religion in nature, but they did. Like, I mean, if you read, like, even in something like The Tiger, Blake has this really obscure reference to the creation story as told in the Book of Job, with the stars, then they threw down their spears and things like that. That metaphor comes from, you're talking about some of these scriptural references. When you think about some of the other poetry that was being written around the same times, immediately before, concurrent with him, and after, by other poets who, I mean, they weren't gothic like Poe, but it was, some of their stuff starts to trend in that darker direction as well. And that, you had to, like, you read Dickens, there's scriptural stuff everywhere on every other
Right.
page.
And I think especially during the time, they didn't have TV distracting them and everything else, and they wrote what they knew. And so what do most people know? The religion that their parents taught them, and Poe was more than just short stories and poetry. He wrote essays he philosophized. And so I want you to, those books right up there, that's all of Edgar Allan Poe's works. My father gave that to me a couple of years ago from 1904.
Nice.
And there's 10 volumes. They're really tiny, so of course the words are really tiny, but but it's absolutely everything from his essays, every little thought that he ever wrote on paper. So I have not got through all of it, but
The majority of his stories were not horror either, which a lot of
oh
people.
yeah, the one
was.
titled horror, it's one volume.
I think
Yeah.
there's like 12 horror stories, and the rest are mostly comedies, science fiction.
Detective.
Detective. There's a lot of
Yes.
detective.
Very
Yes.
much so.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
something I always tell kids that whenever, because I've had to speak at schools a few times, and something I'll say is like, you know, if you've ever seen an episode of Scooby-Doo, well, that story structure is what Poe invented. If you read The Gold Bug, you know, that's what
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo is, right? You know, so like it's like kind of he invented that. Any cop show on TV, anything like
Mhm.
that, they all sort of follow a similar structural pattern. That
And-
Poe
Agatha
called it
Christie. I mean,
Poe called
British
it
shows,
ratio.
the murder mystery, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Poe called it ratiocination,
Yes.
Mhm.
and that was the sort of the Sherlock Holmes stereotype, which was derived from C. Auguste Dupin from Murders in the Rue Morgue.
It's actually he references it. Conan Doyle references it, and
Yeah.
he has a number
Yes.
of times. First he
gives him full
dismisses.
credit.
First he
Full credit.
yeah, he dismisses him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, just a trick." But then he does the exact same thing to
Right.
Watson in the same
Yes.
story, and he actually admits later on that he did. He's like,
Yeah.
he admits at one point that he did. I actually, one book that I have that I'm about getting ready to query to agents and things like that is a Sherlock Holmes universe story, and I do have a bet going on between Sherlock Holmes and Dupin about who could solve it first. There's a little money. There's
Oh,
a little
nice.
money on the line, and they have some correspondence between them. You know, Dupin obviously being older at that point, but than Holmes is, but you know, not by enough that he could still be in his retirement and theoretically
Yeah.
within the, you know, poetic license still be alive.
Yeah, no. Great.
Baby.
And so Poe influenced, I mean, there's Poe influence in every genre I think that we can think of, except possibly hip hop. But I'm sure,
Oh, even so,
I'm sure we
even
could
so,
find
he
a
is
sixth
so
degree, right, that
he is-
connects him
Yeah.
to hip
he's
hop.
so
Oh,
his
yeah.
poetry is so, and he one of the things he's really good at is meter. And
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
you know, if you're gonna talk about, I mean, hip hop relies a lot on meter. It's a different
yeah.
meter than the meter that Poe was writing in, but the concept of writing metered poetry, it's
And that's
I
something
think
that I love about Poe, the rhythm of his writing. Like
Mhm.
we've been delving a little more into reading his poetry aloud on the show, and it's just very interesting the way it's written out, and then figuring out how the sentences come together because of course because it's a poem, it'll stop in the middle of a sentence and go on to the next line, and just figuring all that out and figuring out the rhythm to read it in that makes sense, so it's not choppy, and you know you're not ending the thought at the end of a line, it's continuing or maybe not. You know, and yeah, so
Well,
oh, go ahead.
that was one of the things that Poe is so well versed at, is putting his emphasis on what he needs to say and when he needs to say it. And I think that's why you can't hold it up to something with Shakespeare with the iambic pentameter, where Poe has such a different concept of how to write, not only just with his poetry, but with his short stories, with all this other stuff that he writes. And one of the things that goes back to it, and what I'd like to emphasize, is that one of the things that we kept saying was, in his stories, it wasn't organized religion. He always leaves it open to the reader's interpretation. He always gives you more than one side of the story, even with the what do they call the narrator, the unreliable narrator, that type of thing. And it gives you open season on whether we want not for you season, but I'm just saying open season on how you want to interpret it, how you think about it, how you feel about it. And I think that goes also with his poetry, because people, when you read the poetry, it's like you get lost in it. You get feels, you get the feel. And that was one thing that Poe does. And also on the same line with the detective story, he was one that was very much an advocate of the first forensics. Charles Darwin, he was a fan of Charles Darwin because that was when the, nature of the fittest kind of was coming about and all that. So he was very much a world round type of writer.
Very much.
He would give you what you
understood.
want.
Yeah, I think he really understood the human condition too, because because of and all good writers, right? Ari and Carmen and Jeannie, you're writers too. Season, I'm sorry, segue. Season and Thad, you script, so you're writers as well. Do you write original work?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, any good writer, right, knows.
All of our children write.
Oh,
too.
okay, that's wonderful.
Like our son writes comic books and illustrates them.
Nice.
My daughter has written 3 books.
Yeah,
And my middle
and
daughter writes screenplays and stories.
Yeah.
So everybody in our family writes. We all write.
Great. Yeah,
Nice.
and so every writer knows, like, you don't want to put too many of your beliefs right into your story, because that's going to leave a whole huge amount of people out of it. And Poe understood that, or I don't know if he consciously understood it, but he definitely.
Well, he would pack in whatever influence, just like anyone, whatever you're going through at the time.
Right.
So he certainly, because he was classically educated in England as well, so he could read and write Greek and Latin, and he would have
Could speak French.
he no doubt read Aristotle in the original Greek,
Yeah.
and it's really cool. So also, I think I said a minute ago he was Presbyterian. I think it might have been I don't know. It's one of them.
Yeah, you did. You mentioned that he was
you
actually
said
Presbyterian.
But I think it may have been Episcopal. I don't remember which one. But it's whatever the Allens were.
I'm gonna
think
jump in here real quick and just name drop somebody if you ever really want to get educated on his religious side. There's a pastor named Josh Lewis, and he's spoken at the Poe Museum many times, and he's like an expert on Poe and religion. Like that's what he speaks on. And he's on Instagram. You can find him. Like he's a Poe man, and he goes to Poe events. And I think he lives somewhere near Richmond. But like I've had some really interesting conversations with Josh over the years about like what he dove into that side of it. He would know where he was baptized.
Yeah.
He would just know all of that, and he would be able to pull out all of that if you ever want to go down a rabbit hole and figure out the religious connection, where it is and where it isn't. Josh Lewis would be the one to
Very cool.
that.
Okay.
Good to know. We might have to get him on the podcast one of
Oh
these
yes.
days.
Very interesting. Right.
Really nice guy too.
Yeah.
Wow.
Cool.
And so Carmen and Jeannie, you wanted to delve into the detective aspect of his writing. Did we cover it, or was there more that you wanted to add?
I feel like we did. He only wrote 3 detective fictions, and I wish he would have written more. I absolutely love them. Because like I've read from junior high age to high school. I finished all the Agatha Christie novels and had read Poe's 3 stories, and it's like, but once I discovered Murders in the Rue Morgue when I was probably about 12 or 13, I was like, why isn't there more? And so, because I love Dupin, we actually just discussed this on our Poe Unplugged the other day. That episode just came out. And, we kind of went back and forth with the unreliable narrator not having that name. He's anonymous versus like Watson. And then like with Hercule Poirot, you have Captain Hastings sometimes. And so we had a discussion about, is it good to be named or is it good to be anonymous? And so, but yeah, that's the one thing I wish Poe would have written more of, was more of the detective fiction, because I think he could have turned out some fantastic pieces.
So I
Mhm.
heard, Carmen, I heard you say 3 detective stories. So I take it you don't consider The Gold Bug to be a detective story.
I do, but I kind of categorize it more of an adventure story. But yes, there's definitely that detective fiction element in it.
It has the structure without the detective character.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it has the theme. It has the theme of
Yes.
a detective story, but not like where he has an actual Auguste Dupin putting
Yeah.
to, the detecting and all that. But the one things that we have come across that we want, a lot of people that don't know is that Edgar Allan Poe is known as the father of the detective story
Mhm.
Mhm.
because he was the one that first kind of introduced that whole thing. But the other thing is his second one, which was the murder of Marie Roget, was the closest thing to the first true crime story because he kind of used what was going on with the murder of Mary Rogers and he put it in the newspaper. He talked about it, but he
Trying to
turned it
solve it
into a
himself.
yeah, trying to solve it himself. So, I mean, we are all couch, as they used to say, couch potato detectives or armchair detectives. What was it?
Yeah.
We're all
Oh,
we're
armchair
all
detectives.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're, lawn chair, you name it, kitchen
Lawn
sink.
chair.
We'll look at all of it. But yeah, Poe does not have that moniker as much as he has of the poet and he has of the horror and the goth, but he does need to have that acknowledgement, in my opinion, that you need to know that Sherlock Holmes probably wouldn't have been Sherlock Holmes if it had not come from Edgar Allan Poe. If it you hadn't had his influence. I mean, how many of us can't say that we haven't been influenced by someone in what we do and what we write and what
Oh,
we,
yeah.
all
I
that.
always think it's
So,
funny when talking to some authors, not all authors, but
mhm.
some authors, if they're like, I come up with my own ideas. And I'm like,
Okay,
good luck out there. You know.
for that.
The thing
Um,
is, the idea that they came up with had been
Yeah.
done,
already came up
already
with.
done.
So,
Yeah.
It's like you can't
I-
even come up with monsters
Yeah.
without thinking of Lovecraft. It's like
exactly.
anytime I try to come up with a monster that's different, I'm like, that's just Lovecraft again. It's like,
I think
dang
it
it.
was David Ogilvy, I believe, said good artists borrow, great artists steal.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
I-
what is ironic about that statement is I'm pretty sure he stole that
He
slogan.
probably
Yeah, he
stole
did.
that.
Picasso
Yeah.
stole it, right? Because Picasso used it. Picasso's often credited with that, and he definitely stole it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right.
yes,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So I always tell that to my
Teachers
kids.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we educationally borrow. That's what we
Yes.
call it.
And we use it for educational purpose. We
That's
put that
right.
at the
That's right.
bottom. We
Yes.
put that at the bottom of all the
Yes.
stuff that we steal, so that they
Something
can.
that like my so the um Ryan Stewart is the composer for our films. So something that he says is like, okay, so what we do is you have like something called a temp track when you're editing a
A
film.
temp track? Is that what you said?
Yeah. So what
Oh.
you do is you just take music that you like. So I might take
yeah.
music from like say The Witch, and I put that in
Sure.
as I'm editing, and that's my temporary soundtrack.
Mhm.
So then what I do is when the film is pretty close, then I give it to him to watch with that music in it.
Mhm.
And so what that does is that sets the tone. And so um, he has said to me, he's like, even if I tried to make this exactly like this, it would just evolve into something else. So
Yeah.
like you when you borrow or you steal, you take it and that's just sort of like a starting point, and then you shape it into your own. But it always comes from something else.
And that's actually one of the great going back to education. That's one of the great writing exercises people are reluctant to do. Try to write a paragraph like whoever. Try to write a paragraph like Edgar Allan Poe. Try to write your own paragraph. Like I used to have my kids do that. I used to have them do it with the Shakespeare plays too, and give them each a character, and they had to write a speech as that kind. And they had to say what kind of literary device they use, what kind of syntax do they use. They should write and actually figure out try to write in that style. But then, often those things turn into your own thing because you're influenced. You're trying to write like them, but you're writing like you and them, and ends
You
up
can't
being
help it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you end up being,
Yeah.
you know, doing something different, but it's a great way. It's a great way to learn how to write, and it's a great springboard for
Yeah.
for writing your own things too. To say, just like to have someone like that, you know, in mind as you're writing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like to think of it like I used to tell my kids, think of it as you're collaborating. Even though that author might be dead, he might no longer be around, but you're using an idea or a literary aspect of something that he's done, and you're now collaborating because you're taking that initial idea or that initial thing, but you're putting your own spin with it. So you're collaborating. So you know that's the way I look at it, because everything that I've written and I've done in my lifetime, there has always been some influence that pushed me to that direction. But what it came out was my own, as my own individual stamp of approval, kind of thing. So that's just the way I look at it, because teachers, we collectively borrow and we collaborate. So that's what we call.
That's
And
why
there's a
copyright
great,
laws give provisions for educational purposes.
yes,
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
so they say.
Yep.
But there's a great paragraph also. It's a chapter in Virginia Woolf in A Room of Her Own, where she breaks down the syntax. She's like, this is how you write like a 19th century male author. This is how you write like a 19th century female author. And she's like, noun, verb, like she has all the punctuation and the parts of speech and everything out. And if you wanted to, you know, you could use that as a template. Like if you're writing historical fiction and you wanted to, you know, you wanted to write in a certain style,
Mhm.
you could use that chapter as your template. Auden used to do the same thing in his poetry classes. He used to tell them, you're going to write a verse of poetry, and this will be your meter. You're going to do I am trochee, you know, and there was a whole thing, and he would have the whole poem mapped out for them, and you would have to write something, you know, in that style. And you could do that. You could do that with any. If you do that with Poe, you could do that
Oh yeah.
with anybody who has. It's easier when it's a writer with a distinctive style.
I'd say it's
that
pretty tough to imitate Emily
well,
Dickinson.
yeah,
I mean,
well, yeah,
Oh
it's-
yeah.
but like I was thinking, like, are there like how original was Poe? And we're talking about like his backgrounds
Oh,
and
yeah.
like
Mhm.
we're huge. I'm a huge Emily Dickinson fan. I've been to the museum multiple times. We took the kids there in October, and the kids know that when I talk about her, it's a totally different world because I'm like, she literally did create something new. Like
Oh yeah.
the way she uses the M
Mhm.
dash is 100% unique and new. Nobody else
Mhm.
was doing that in the world at the time. No one really has done it that way since. And then I tell the kids, but let's remember that Poe wrote an entire essay. He wrote an entire piece on the M dash. You can read it. He
Yeah.
talks about how to use the M dash. And I always tell the kids, like, now what would be really fun is if we could pretend that we could get those two in the room discussing it.
Oh
And it would be
gosh.
really
Yes.
cool to know what Poe thought of Emily's use of the M dash,
Yeah.
because I have a feeling he would have been like, this is a little bit too much.
Right.
That would make a great short.
Like,
Yeah.
Although
would make a
Emily
great
Dickinson
short
did
movie.
say her
well, you would have had to get her to come out of her room to see him, and that probably
Yeah.
wouldn't.
Yeah,
coconut cake recipe is choice.
It is amazing.
It's
We
really
make it every year.
and that was the
Really good.
beginning, you know, that was the beginning of writers being obsessed with the M dash and using too many. And
Oh yeah.
you know, that's
Oh,
all
yeah.
the joke now is like the editors want you to take out all your M dashes, and we want to keep all our M dashes, right?
Yeah.
It's like, don't touch my dash.
all the memes about the M dash and everything.
Well, didn't they take a bunch out?
When
Like,
they published her,
yeah.
they
Took
took
it
it
out.
out
Yeah.
because they're like, people aren't ready for this.
Yeah,
And-
and so Poe would be arguing with Emily Dickinson that she uses too many M dashes. Emily Dickinson would be telling Poe he uses too many exclamation points.
Exactly.
You know, and that's the big thing now too, is
And he's being
take
too
out all your
melodramatic.
exclamation points.
He's
I mean, who
using too
came
many
up with that?
words.
Like if your novel has more than like 3
For
exclamation
Emily
points,
Dickinson.
it's too many. And then I'm reading Edgar Allan Poe, it's like an exclamation point almost
Mhm.
every other line. You know, he was
Well,
just
you
so
know,
excited about it.
That's one of the other things is that a lot of times, and I write about this a lot, it really bothers me. Like people say, oh, there are these writing rules. And
Oh.
really, a lot of the times, the writing rules are really just trends and styles and whatever's
Mhm.
going on at
Right,
the time
because
in
every
the
rule
industry.
someone
Because,
comes up with,
and
it's like, well, you can
yeah,
choose
it's like you could
writers that is.
find anybody who, you know, number of great writers who don't do that.
Could you
whatever.
imagine if Poe had followed a list of rules?
Yep.
You know, what would we have ended up with? We probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about him. If he had followed them.
Guidelines. He had guidelines for
What he thought was
all his short stories, and even his.
He was
Well,
a
sure, because he was getting them
vicious
into.
critic,
It
too.
was that
getting
you had to
published and-
read it in
Right.
one sitting.
Yeah.
He would start a lot of them in the middle of the story. I think it's called in medias res when it's
Medium.
Mhm.
I mean,
yeah. I can read it. I don't know how to say it, but yeah, like
That's
so
okay.
he did have sort of like guidelines that he would stick to, and he was very critical of something he didn't like he
Mhm.
would let you know, and like I think he probably had a much less successful career while he was alive because of that. So
Because
they
of
were,
speaking
I
his
guess it
mind.
was really common to sort of, for writers and poets to kind of pat each other on the back, write positive reviews about each
Oh,
other,
yeah.
and he just wouldn't do it. He didn't care. He'd be like, "Yeah, this sucks," and he'd just come out and
Or
say
like
that.
for Griswold, he's
That's
like, "Yeah, I'll write your review."
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. There's a really good drunk history on Poe. If I'm sure everyone here has seen that,
I
but
think
Oh,
he
yeah.
has, yeah.
it's really funny. It kind of sums
It
up.
was-
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Was
know,
somebody
yeah.
else drunk, or are we talking about us being drunk and reading the history? Okay.
Oh, maybe
no,
both.
no,
Get
no.
it straight here.
The show Drunk History.
Drunk history.
Yeah.
Edgar.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. I know.
Like my kids know it. My kids know it
it's
because we watch
It's
it.
such a great relationship between Poe, and it just explains the
Pure
the
frenemies.
Poe Griswold thing like
Oh,
in a
yeah.
really comical way, but it's actually very accurate, but it's really
That
funny.
works.
Have you guys seen the rap battles?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, the
Yes.
who did Poe face? I can't
Stephen
remember.
King.
Stephen King.
Was it?
Stephen King.
Yeah, Stephen
Stephen
King.
King.
Yes. I
Oh,
think you're-
Stephen.
yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
right.
It
Oh,
was.
that's great.
It was.
Oh,
Mhm.
that was great.
Well,
All
and
right.
just like we were talking about, Poe has made it into a Stevie Nicks song. Molly Hatchet did "Murders in the Rue Morgue."
No.
So
Iron
when we were
Maiden.
talking
Iron
about
Maiden.
hip hop, what?
Iron Maiden.
Whatever.
Alan Parsons Project.
Mary Hatchet,
Yes.
Iron Maiden.
Yeah.
Yeah. They kind of, I mean, to me, all those heavy metals, they were kind of all together at one time, so I never could tell the difference. I'm like, I don't know which one's which. I
you
blame
pull
my brother
yourself
because he
off.
was a Molly Hatchet fan. What?
I've
Sorry.
left our microphones off. Look, not lighting up. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I love Iron Maiden. I love, Black Sabbath, Molly Hatchet, all that kind of thing. So my bad. Iron Maiden did it. Stevie Nicks. So Poe has made it into the music world. So he could be in hip hop, rap and all
Mhm.
that. I was just
Well,
had
there's
this
a
flash of,
recent song. Who the hell is Edgar?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. A
yeah,
couple
they were
years
I don't
doing-
know.
ago.
I don't. It's not my thing.
yeah, mine
But I
not
guess
thing
it's
either.
really big.
Yeah.
There's a good bit. So if you've ever seen our film, The Telltale Heart, the ending credits, there's a band
Mhm.
called Farming Disaster,
Mhm.
and the title of the song is "What Do You Do with a Corpse?" And they just go through a couple of different Edgar Allan Poe stories. They do like the cast, Telltale
Oh,
Heart.
nice.
Yeah, and with their permission, we restructured the song so that Telltale would be like the first one you hear.
Oh, cool.
But we
Very
made sure
cool.
we got permission from them to do that, and they're really cool with it. It's actually a really funny song. If you're a Poe fan, it's a very funny song.
Nice.
If you've
Very
never
cool.
heard Poe, it's just a goofy tune, but
They're like,
Yeah.
yeah,
like
very good. Yeah. But
It works.
it's a good song, and so but I'll put the plug out for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna start wrapping up this portion. Ari, you wanted to talk about like the meter and what you love about poetry. Was there anything else you wanted to add about that?
Yeah, so I really like, one of the things that I think often gets lost with Poe was just because of the persona and because of all the other unrelated Poe stuff was how good he was technically, especially as a poet, and the way that he's being really intentional with his choices, meter wise and imagery wise, all these kinds of things. So one of the things like we were talking about the Raven before, ravens written in trochaic octameter, which is an odd meter. No, I mean that's a really strange thing. But one of the things that I love about, like trochaic meter in general, our natural meter in English is iambic. We all know the Shakespeare iambic pentameter and all that. And trochaic is the opposite of iambic. So you have, unstressed, stressed is iambic, unstressed, stressed, unstressed, stressed. Whereas trochaic is stressed, unstressed. You have once, upon, mid, you're gonna say it in the sing-songy thing. It's backwards. And it's something that Shakespeare did in Midsummer Night's Dream, where the first entrance of the fairies switches from iambic to trochaic, because it's the opposite. It's the magic world. It's
Okay.
not the human world. You go from the rational to irrational because it sounds backwards, especially when the entire thing, because the players are in prose and but the dominant, he switches the dominant meter to go from that to that. And then for Poe, that poem is actually unusual because it's pretty consistently in trochaic octameter. Poe switches back and forth. He's great. My favorite Poe poem is actually The Bells and all
Oh,
of
I
the
love
different
the
sound
bells.
and
Yeah.
sense devices. I had a kid when I taught the bells to my AP Lit class, and I had a kid come in at the end of I used to have them listen to the Basil Rathbone reading the thing, and he got it, and he got one of those shirts with a speaker on it, and he came into class with it like coming out of his chest. But the way that the interior vowel sound and the bells changes in each of the four parts of the poem, from the tinkling of the bells, and then
Yeah.
by the end, when it gets to the Gothic part with the rolling and the tolling and all that stuff, and having lived a large portion of my life uptown by all those churches that were driving him nuts when he was living there, and all the bells went off on Sunday morning. And then thing, and like that's what it was like. Yeah, he was not driven by the bells, and he got to write this poem, but the way he was so intentional about the way the vowel sound shifts over the course of the poem, and where it's short I's, and then he's got the A's and then the O's, and then they get and each one matches the mood of each section of the poem. Or in the Raven, we were talking about the mixture of images in the Raven, and I love that image. You're talking about the pagan images of the village where the raven's on the bust of Pallas.
Yes.
And you think of Pallas Athena, and Athena's the goddess of wisdom and rationality and all that kind of thing. And then you have this raven from the Knights Plutonian shore and another demonic thing on top of it. Like it's like in a dominant position over the the symbol of rational, Western tradition and all of this kind of thing, kind of, and the way, and yes, and it works on a number of levels, because if you are going to go into the reference, you're going to analyze it, you can find all of these things. But also there's something about the way that he understood the musicality of language, that even if you don't know what a trochaic octameter is, it still has that eerie sound to you. It still sounds otherworldly or off, because that's what the meter does. So just hearing it, and again, you have to hear it out loud, to really get that. But just hearing it, you'll get the effect that he was going for. And it wasn't just, because of all the other personality stuff with Poe and other pop culture stuff with Poe, people often really forget just how good he was technically in a lot of these areas as a poet. And that's one of the things that draws me to him as a poet and as someone who writes formal poetry, is there's just so much you can learn from him in all of these technical aspects of writing poetry.
Well, like Robert Frost used to say, free verse, his old saying about playing tennis, and how like rhyming poetry is like playing tennis, and free verse is like it's playing tennis without a net. It's not tennis.
It's not
Like, like he had a real, like, Frost is also like close to my heart, but like he had like a real view on like non-rhyming free verse and what it was, the direction it was leading. Like,
and it's funny because I
poetry.
live out on Long Island, and everything is Walt Whitman over here.
Oh, of course,
And
yeah.
and Walt Whitman
Grandfather
is
Walt.
the big,
Walt.
free verse,
Oh yeah.
and not everyone is Walt Whitman. Well, he's, you know,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah,
and,
that's-
and Walt Whitman, when he wanted to write in metered verse, like for "Oh Captain, My Captain" is probably the most famous
Mhm.
example.
Oh,
He
yeah.
Yeah.
definitely could. But you know, for me personally, I like Poe better. I like Coleridge better. I like, you
Mhm.
know, Byron and Blake, and
Yeah.
you know, these are, you know, at least for my own poetry, that's what I'm drawn to. And Poe is he's such a master of all the nuanced poetic techniques.
Mhm.
And, you know,
Yeah, and Ray Bradbury,
Yes.
he said read poetry for writers. His biggest advice was read poetry every day.
and Ray Bradbury loved Poe. I know
Mm.
people don't. A lot of
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Poe, but the opposite, because everybody knows Ray Bradbury for science fiction.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Most
Mhm.
of Ray Bradbury's
Oh, right.
early fiction was Gothic,
Oh yeah.
and
Oh yeah. I was
and,
gonna
and
say
there's
Ray
such
Bradbury
great
wrote more
Gothic
horror
stuff.
than
Yeah,
sci-fi.
when especially his early short stories, and he
Mhm.
loved Poe. Poe was one of the
Yep.
there's one of the Mars stories where I think it's in The Invisible Man, where all the writers who had magic and irrational, you know, things, all of the writers that lead people the wrong way are exiled to this planet or whatever, and Poe is chief
Oh,
among
it's
them out
cheap.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's well, Dickens is out there and he's like, they sent me here for only writing one story and I had ghosts in it. Um, you know, and you know, they got Poe up there and Shakespeare and all of that. But
Yeah.
he loved Poe. He
Yeah.
had an aunt who used to read him Poe as a child, among other things, but that was one of the things he really liked.
Wonderful. Yeah. And he was said that about short story, right? Just story writers, to read poetry every day. And you can, I know we're not talking about Ray Bradbury, but I mean, we're talking about Poe, but Ray Bradbury read tons of Poe, and his writing is beautiful. And it is like poetry, even his novels. So yeah,
He
it
used to
really,
say,
it expands the mind. It makes the mind, you're not just telling a story, you're telling a story beautifully.
yeah, Ray Bradbury, they used to say, you know, tell you not to write purple prose. He said, well, mine is a royal purple.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
one of my favorite Ray Bradbury quotes.
Different shades. Everybody's a different shade of a color
Yeah.
or hue or tone or
Right.
whatever you want to call
Yeah.
them.
It's not just green grass or
That's
blue
right.
sky.
That's
So
right.
Season and Thad, one question before we wrap up this portion. You wanted to talk about the process of adapting Poe to film. So is there anything special about adapting Poe to film that you want to share?
Well, there's always this voice in the back of your head that like Poe would hate this.
Well,
I've
wanted-
learned to do it better over the years. Like I would say from the time we did the cast to the time we did the Telltale Heart, I'd say it's much more refined.
Yeah.
But what you inevitably wind up doing is you have to change things because they're just different mediums. So there's things that work great when you're reading it, and other things it's like, well, okay, so for example, the Telltale Heart, you're reading this anonymous narrator. You don't know their name, anything like that.
Right.
So you have to sort of read between the lines. It's like, okay, so what part becomes spoken dialogue and what part are you going to keep as narration, if any
Right,
at all?
because a lot of his stories don't have dialogue. It's just
Right, and then
yeah.
you'll wind up filling in spaces. So like in the Telltale Heart, there's the line, "I love the old man." That's it.
Yeah.
All right. So we were just like, well, let's show that a little bit more. So you especially with what we do, with what our mission is, we don't want to make something different. We want to make Poe's story into the screen, but you do have to change things, but we want to keep it constrained within the spirit of what he did. So like in the Telltale Heart, we show the narrator, who we have as a female, which we can get into that too, if that wasn't an arbitrary choice. Where she helps this guy. This guy falls he gets, he's old, he's elderly. She gets him up, and he's like, he's decrepit, he's humbled, he hates the way things are, and she comforts him in the midst of that. And you're showing it. Then you hear the narrator, I love the old man. So then it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
That part is not in the story, but we thought, well, okay, well, that's consistent with the story, so you do things like that. And I think, like in the Raven, geographically in the room, there were little things that didn't work.
Oh, okay.
When he goes to the window, when he goes to the door, so we wound up switching two of them, because it's like, well, the door's over here and the window,
Yeah, right.
So you make adjustments, and everybody has a different threshold as to what that is. And you've seen movies, everybody's read books and seen movies that were adapted from the book, and you're like, that was nothing like the book. And then you're like, wow, that was just like the book. It just depends on what your tastes are.
Sure.
So with us, we want people to be, really, to inspire them to read Poe, right? So we don't want to make it like super different. So it's a process of adaptation. And then, like, we'll sometimes like run it past scholars and say, what do you think of this? Are we going too far here? Are we not going far enough? And you do have to take risks when you're making it. So you can't just blanketly repeat it. Like,
Right.
if you've ever seen the remake of Psycho,
Yes. Yeah.
it's almost shot for shot, and it's terrible.
Right. Yeah. And
It doesn't have the
isn't that
same
weird?
effect at
Isn't
all.
that weird that it's shot for
Yeah.
almost shot for shot with a
Doesn't
little
have the
bit
same
of more
effect at all.
innuendo, like
Just
filled
doesn't
out.
like the film Psycho, which Hitchcock was greatly influenced by Poe as well.
Oh gosh.
But you watch Psycho, it's a captivating film. It's intense, especially in 1960. And then you watch the remake, you're like, yeah, this is okay.
Yeah.
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 I mean, and it's almost a repetition of it. So you do have to, anytime that you transform something, even within the same medium, you have to put some kind of your spirit into it. You can't just
I
regurgitate.
agree with that. Yeah.
So that's also part of the adaptation process. It's sort of logistical, because it's a different medium, like I said, geographically, like who says what, where do they stand, all that. And it's also, it has to have vibrance to it. It can't just be a paint by the numbers.
Which I think he did really well on the Raven, because that has the potential to be really boring. It's a dude literally talking. One person, one actor. And so, like, I think he did a good job with that, because that could potentially be, we get lots of feedback from students that really like it.
Yeah.
So it obviously is able to hold their attention. But but if you really think about it, like, he's literally just like reciting all of this, and there's a narrator and along with him whenever he would talk. But it's like, it's really just a dude in a room. And then there's a raven.
And every once in a while he talks to the raven. And
then
the raven answers back. And that's
that had to make
all
the
the
choice. Do we actually make the raven
Right.
talk? Well, that's going to sound really corny. There's pretty much no
Oh
way to
yeah,
do that.
that's a good thing to talk. There was
like,
no way to make that sound good.
Not dumb.
It sounded stupid.
Oh, yeah.
How we did it.
The raven
So
talking.
Yeah, so there is this
Never
kind of
mind.
motif in there where if you read it, you're like, maybe the raven wasn't even there. I mean,
Oh yeah.
who knows? Maybe this was all in his head. So, or it just represents something. So we're like, the raven doesn't have to talk. So we just had the narrator say it, and it was like, nevermore. It sounded like a pirate, it just wasn't.
Well, did you guys ever see the Raven? I'm sure you have the Raven with Vincent Price.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about not following a story. I mean, that thing was all over the place. But
that's a kind of a little bit of a pet peeve of mine too, is when
I love Vincent Price. Nothing against Vincent Price.
No, it's okay. Vincent Price is awesome. Everybody loves Vincent Price. But when they take an adaptation and they take the name of it, like they take the name of the Poe story, and it's like, this is not an adaptation. This is so different. You just grifted the name,
Right. Yeah.
And it could be a great movie. It could be like, if you saw it and it wasn't called, wasn't named after a Poe story, and you saw it, you'd be like, this is pretty good.
It might have been the canary.
Like, I mean, if you watch like we talked about Psycho has the story beats of the Telltale Heart.
Mhm.
You know, if you really if you would outline Telltale Heart, it's very similar. There's just this build up to the murder is in the middle of the story, and then there's the police investigation, and there's just, you know,
Yeah.
chaos
And the
ensues, you know.
beating of the heart is Norman hearing his mother talking to him all the
Yeah.
time, right? When it's impossible
you
that
could
she's talking to him.
Yeah.
you could apply a lot of metaphors to it, but
Yeah.
that
I mean,
was
it's based on Ed Gein. So let's just be honest.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot.
Mhm.
Anything
That's where
else.
Psycho comes from, was
Yeah.
the story of Ed Gein and wearing
Sure.
a woman's suit.
Mhm.
But yeah.
But in terms of the story structure, I mean,
Yeah.
it has the similarities to Telltale Heart. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think you guys are okay on time
Mhm.
because I'd like to cover more.
Yeah, we'll probably need to wrap it up pretty soon.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna do a little segue. Oh, wait, let me make sure. Okay. We're here with sorry, I gotta gather my thoughts. Who am I here with? We're here with Poe Movies, 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe podcast, and A.A. Rubin, author and poet. We'll be right back after this. Yay. We can make a gesture for editing. All right, so we're back with Jeannie, Ari, Carmen, Thad, and Season. We're talking about Edgar Allan Poe, and we're going to jump into the pop quiz. So feel free to elaborate on this. This is going to be really tough because I'm going to try not to have everybody answer every single one of the questions. And so I'm having to, I'm just going to call on you. I'm going to ask you a question. And if you can't answer it within a couple seconds, it's going to pass to someone else who can. This is not a game show. Everybody's going to get an A+ 100% anyway. So, but the idea is to be quick and as informative as possible. I hope I give you good questions.
If I can answer them.
And some of them will be, I will call on each of you, but depending on how elaborate you get, because we can elaborate on this, we'll see where it takes us. All right, so question number 1, name one of the women Edgar wrote about. Season.
Mhm.
Kind of debatable who Annabelle Lee is about, right? So
Okay.
it could be multiple women. It could have been Virginia because she was in the cottage and she was dying, and it came out, I think it came out after she died, and a lot of people were like, but then a lot of women claimed it was about them. So I would say he wrote about Virginia, but I would say indirectly, she was in everything that he wrote, especially when he described women with dark hair and pale skin, because when she had tuberculosis, that was her to a T.
Right.
So,
Ari, do you have another answer for that? Just
I
any
don't know,
woman.
like real people or character names, or what are we going for here?
It's your interpretation, actually.
It's my You know,
How about
yeah, no. So I mean, there's this motif of the dying woman and the dead, the dead woman or the dying woman in a lot of his poetry. And yes, there were a lot of women in his life who would fit that to various degrees, but it's also a larger motif, part of a larger motif in poetry in general, in a certain style of poetry, to have that that kind of archetype in there of the dying woman in the bower or in the bed, or things like that. And I think about the dark hair, the pale skin, right? A lot of that, yes, you can match it up with people in his life, but there are also plenty of things in the tradition where people are writing about that type of woman as well.
Yeah.
So it's hard to it's hard to say in that.
And Carmen and Jeannie, do you know what Edgar Allan Poe's favorite drink was?
Oh, Carmen, wasn't it an old fashioned?
No,
Hey, you're
Um,
with the husband with the bartender. I'm like,
yeah, but
on.
he wouldn't know that either. Trying to
I want to
think.
say gin and tonic because that's my favorite, but no.
Ari, do you
Uh,
know?
I don't know exactly what it was. I know
I
what Robert Louis Stevenson's was, but
I've I've heard it
no,
before. It's just not coming to my
yeah.
brain.
I
Seasoned
feel like
Dad, do you know?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I think
Supposedly
it was alcohol.
It
eggnog
was
and
what?
brandy.
really.
Eggnog and
Eggnog
brandy.
and
Yeah.
brandy.
Wow.
I guess
That sounds awesome.
his family even had, there's even like an eggnog recipe that his family had, that
Mm.
so it was like
Mhm.
obviously it wasn't store-bought eggnog back then,
Yeah.
but yeah, eggnog and brandy.
Yeah. I like everything but the brandy part of that. But okay.
Brandy's really good in eggnog.
Yeah.
And does anyone know what his favorite song was?
When the
Oh,
Saints come marching in. I'm just saying.
it's the song that Virginia and Levi on Beyond the Oblong Box. It's their intro song. I can't remember the name of it.
It was a hymn.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I was like teasing about when the Saints come marching in,
Right.
but I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, I
Because there's
cannot
some.
remember the name of it, but yeah, it's
Wait a minute.
beautiful. It's very pretty.
Now, if
Thinking.
you hum it, if you hum it, I could probably
Oh, I've
figure
only
it out.
listened to it a couple times. I can't even hum it.
Well,
And
then you might as well tell us what it is because
Yeah.
I forgot. So,
Does anybody know?
No.
anybody?
Oh, damn it. You know, and what's really funny is that's the one thing I didn't write down the answer to.
Oh,
So
we can look it up.
I'm gonna,
Hold
you
on.
know, I
I'm
read
like one
it
of my
and
kids in my classroom. I'll
I
look it
thought
up for you. Hold
I thought I would remember it off the top of my head, but I'm just gonna look it up really fast.
Jeannie, your kids still say look it up?
Oh gosh.
Because my kids all say search it up and it drives me nuts.
Search it up. Oh, how
Yeah,
funny.
well, I'm gonna search.
You
I'm gonna
know,
search it up. I was like,
I-
why do you need to search
I
it
wonder
up?
if that
Why up?
I wonder,
It's
Ari, if
more-
that's a regional thing because the kids in the South say look it up.
Really?
there
Yeah.
it
You
is.
know, because we all used to say, we'd say. I mean, I remember when Google became a thing when it wasn't, but like for a long time it was just Google it, and I'm like,
That's what we
search it
say.
up is like
Our
so
kids
many
say Google
words.
it.
Yeah, there's so many
Yeah.
more
That's what they
words, and
say.
search it takes longer to say.
Yeah.
It's awkward, but they all say search it up. I'm gonna search it up on. I'm gonna search it up online. It's like
Um,
not too many words.
you're
not
East Coast though, right?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
up in New
so
York.
I
Yeah,
think like things that
I'm
take place
resting
in
this
the East
bosom.
Coast take a while to get to the West
Yeah.
Coast, so I haven't heard that
I
yet.
know. I
but
thought your slang. I thought West
I
Coast
will.
slang was like the cutting edge, and it like I guess it makes its way from both coasts.
Yeah. So Edgar,
Okay, come rest in this bosom. I think is
Come
what it's
Rest in This
called.
That's
Bosom.
it.
That was his
Yes.
favorite
Yes.
song. All right, so I'm pretty sure all of you guys are gonna have something to add to this one. Who was the Poe toaster?
Jeff
No
No one
Jerome.
knows.
No one knows.
Nobody
it's a
knows. Yeah.
mystery.
Okay.
Yeah, no one knows.
Yeah.
We know what his favorite drink
Ding, ding,
was, right? We
ding.
know what he used to leave.
Cognac.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
So so
The-
that's where my mind went for that question.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I assumed that cognac was Poe's
Yeah,
favorite because the Poe
Because like
toaster
there must have been a reason, right? But
for
it's not.
75 years,
Yeah.
some mysterious person visited Poe's
Yeah.
grave on Poe's birthday and would drink some cognac and leave the bottle, and nobody ever knew who they
Leave the
were.
bottle, leave the three roses. and
Yes.
Yep. Oh yes, and it was arranged in a special
Arranged, yeah.
way.
And
I
like,
wonder if that has something to do with his family background because you don't see cognac as something in every household, but most of the time, if you look at the history of the rich families and stuff, that's usually what they always had on their staple to offer to guests and stuff would be a cognac, especially after dinner drink. So
And
I wonder if that
isn't
had it was just a thought.
Was this in
Isn't-
the, actually, I don't even know the Poe toaster. It took place around 75 years, but it might not have been the same person.
Right.
And what
Yeah.
years were they active?
I think it
I-
started
I
what,
didn't
early
write this.
1900s?
Relatively recently,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then they had a second guy come around.
Right,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I think the British
Wasn't it
or
like as early
someone,
like was
they
around the
actually hired
1930s or
someone
so,
to do
right?
it.
They did
The
hire
city
someone.
hired somebody to do it for a while,
Right.
but I don't know if that's still continuing. Does
Yeah.
anybody know?
I don't think so. It started out in the early 1930s, according to
1930s.
witnesses, and continued until 2009.
Yeah.
And most accounts say 1949, I guess, to kind of
All right.
solidify it. I guess maybe more, maybe actual eyewitness accounts, maybe from that time.
Mhm.
And they think that it was a second person later because there was like a 2 or
Mhm.
3 year gap and then it started
Yeah.
up again. And so they think like it was the son of the Poe toaster.
Mhm.
Yeah. A family member that continued it on. So yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of makes sense.
I mean, you got the face wrapped in the head. You could put anyone under there.
Right.
Yes.
The
you
Invisible
could.
Man.
It's like one of those Batman comics where he has Alfred dress up as Batman and like,
Mhm.
Right.
in another
Yeah.
one of the suits and comes out from the
Yeah. I
shows
like
up as
to
Bruce
romantic.
Wayne. Yeah.
I like to romantically think that it's Poe and he's time traveled and it's
There you
him.
go. That's a lovely idea.
Yes.
Okay. What was Poe's mother's name, Jeannie?
What was her name?
Yeah.
You put me on the
His
spot.
birth
there with a minute.
mother.
Hold on. Oh, it's not the adopted mother.
Right, not the adopted. What is the birth mother's
Hold on.
name? Okay. I'm not gonna say anything.
She knows it. She knows it.
I do. I just, for some reason, it just went right out my head. I know
Now
it's
you know
not
how your
Virginia. I know it's
students felt. They knew the
yeah,
answer
I know. This is
too,
why I
but-
tortured them every week this way. I'm just saying. It wasn't. Was it Irma? No.
No.
Mhm.
Alma? No.
You're on the right path though.
Yeah. See, it's just like what Elvira. I know it's not Elvira. All
You're closer there.
right, Carmen, help me out. You're 6
Eliza.
degrees here.
Eliza.
Eliza. Oh,
Eliza.
that was it short for, wasn't it Elizabeth? I don't think so.
Okay.
It's always Eliza Poe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's always been Eliza. That's, and
Oh,
I should
okay.
have remembered that because of Eliza Doolittle from the, My Fair Lady play. Sorry.
Mhm.
Okay.
But yeah, Eliza. So,
All right.
or Liz, I mean, it
It-
could
It might
be
have been
Elizabeth.
short for Elizabeth. Yeah, I have Elizabeth written down, but you take the Beth off and it's Eliza.
Yeah, I wonder what they've got written on her tombstone. Because when we were talking to Sharon, when she was visiting all these tombstones, didn't she visit her tombstone?
Maybe.
Yes.
Ah,
Yes,
I
she
couldn't
did.
remember
She
what.
did.
Okay.
So
I guess I never really noticed, it's one of those things. Sorry.
we
All
gave we gave a toast at the beginning of the show, or I did.
Mhm.
And I mean I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but it was Hic tandem felici condentur reliquiae. Does anyone know what that translates as?
Anyone?
Supposedly it's written, it was in his epitaph.
I think it's in the Latin.
Oh yeah, but
Yeah,
does
I
anyone know
know
what it
I've
means?
seen it translated, but I can't think of what it means. I think it's something about the circle. Hold on.
I don't know. Are you? Oh, don't look it up.
I'm not.
That's cheating.
I'll search it up.
I'm using my resources. It's like,
Yeah.
Well, to me, and we can
I know.
read on this, but
I know. I'm not looking it up. Someone texted me. Sorry.
okay.
It's Carmen. No,
It's just coincidence.
No, it's not
no,
me.
yeah, it was just coincidence. It wasn't her. No, I honestly, Requiem. I think
Reliquiae.
your reliquiae. In life, we something about relinquishing life. I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah, it's actually, I mean, it's not, it doesn't seem like what it's translated as actually. So it's like, does
That's
anyone
Latin
else
for you.
know? No? It's,
Anybody? Come on.
it's kind of sad actually. It says here at last he is happy.
Yeah.
So I thought
Well, that's
that was
Poe.
interesting because it's not just here he is happy, it's here at last he is happy, which suggests he was never happy. I don't know if that were true. I think he was happy. He wrote comedy and satire, so there's a part of me that thinks Poe was happy sometimes.
But one of the things like Terry Pratchett wrote, they said about Terry Pratchett, who was a big, satirist and comic fantasy writer. is people didn't realize how angry he was about the things he was satirizing.
Oh yeah.
It's like they asked Neil Gaiman because they wrote Good Omens together, and they're like, "Oh, Terry
he was
Pratchett must be
pissed.
this really, great, happy-go-lucky guy writing all this funny stuff." And he's like, "No, you don't
Oh,
realize
no.
he is angry, and
You're
this is the
very
way he deals with his
Yeah.
anger over all the injustice and whatever that he sees in the
Mhm.
world."
Oh
So
yeah. I
writing
just
That
wrote
makes sense.
thud.
satire and comedy
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a sign of being
Right. That's
being
true.
happy.
It is true. Oops, lost my place. Who were some famous people that portrayed his characters? Past, present, new, old.
Vincent
John,
Price, we've been talking about all
Yeah.
night. So
yeah,
Bela Lugosi.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Melling.
Yep.
Harry Melling.
From the Pale Blue Eye just recently.
I love that.
John Aston played Poe.
If we want to go with satire, right, we can't forget the Homer Simpson version.
Yes.
House of Horror. There
Right.
was a good period of a year or so where I couldn't read that poem after after that episode aired, because all I heard was, Homer Simpson saying, "Truly your forgiveness I implore." It's like,
Right.
no, that's not how it's supposed to sound.
No.
Homer Simpson's haunting your Poe dreams.
How did my, yeah, it was like, I really couldn't read I could not read the poem for like a full year without hearing
Oh.
that after that Treehouse of Horror.
Yeah.
I'm not
Gosh.
sure who did the voice acting, but Poe
Yeah.
has made an appearance on South Park as well with the goth kid.
Right.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
summon him, and I don't know who does the. It's probably Trey or whoever's like
Right.
doing all the-
Mhm.
One
But
of
it's really funny when they summon him because he's like got a cigarette. He's just like, why am I here? Basically, it's
Oh,
really
yeah.
funny.
So why am I here?
Yeah.
And then
George,
there'd
go
George
ahead.
C. Scott.
Yeah, George C.
Yeah.
Scott played Dupin.
Mhm.
Technically, Val Kilmer played the unreliable narrator, but he was named in that version
Oh.
Mhm.
in
Okay.
1986.
And somebody has to say John Cusack.
I was just
know
gonna say John Cusack.
Yes.
we wish it
I
didn't
was-
happen, but yeah, that was.
Yeah.
We got to mention it.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Jeffrey Combs played Poe. Trying to think.
Now,
More
what are some of the
Springfield.
women actors? We're naming all the male
I know
actors,
we
but what were
are
some of
we're
the women
naming all the men,
characters?
but it's like, wasn't
Yeah.
there did any
Oh.
wasn't there a movie about Marie Roget, or no? Am I remembering incorrectly?
Now, they did Murders in the Rue Morgue, but I don't know if there was a movie about the second one, the murder of
Yeah.
Mary Roget. I'm trying to
Well,
think
the
of
Rue
there's
Morgue was
Bernice.
women. Were two women.
Who was the one that played with Vincent Price for, wasn't it Ligeia? Who played Ligeia?
Oh gosh, I don't even think I've
Um,
seen that one yet. I hate to say. I haven't
Yeah,
seen everything, of course.
I think it was another one in another of Corman's movies that he did.
Yes. I can't remember who the actress was.
See, that's odd. I
Yeah,
mean, I
I
can't, I'm
think
coming
that's
up blank on
weird.
all the females. That's
Yeah.
just me.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, that's
just-
just sad.
I think that's
Well, let's
culture. We'll
let's just
change
say
that.
let's
The
just
whole
say
cast.
Rosie Dogood, the actor that played the mad woman in the Telltale Heart, my film.
Yeah, there you
Oh,
go.
okay, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There, perfect.
Yes.
That works.
Thank you,
Keep the bang up, bro.
Rosie.
And
Durgan.
really, all the
Durgan?
women that were just on Follow the House of Usher. I mean,
Right.
Oh,
Oh,
Yes.
right, yeah,
Paula
yeah.
Gugino,
Oh.
she's the best.
Oh gosh,
She
yeah.
played,
Yeah.
like Verna. You're not going to top that character. She played.
Oh, no.
Verna was fantastic.
Yeah.
My favorite character on that show, easily.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh, and the one that played Madeline, was
Oh
it Mary
yeah,
McDonald? Mary,
Yeah.
was it Mary?
she was good.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. I've always loved her, so she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Annabeth Gish, who played their mother,
Yeah.
of the Usher's mother. So see, we did name some females, so
We
that's
did,
good.
yeah. So this isn't really a pop quiz question, but new or old, what is your favorite movie? Poe movie. And you can name your own if you wanted to. Everybody really quick. Season, what's your favorite Poe movie?
Favorite Poe movie? Am I not allowed to plug? I'm just kidding.
Oh, I gotta. She
I,
said you
I'm
can
not
use your.
allowed to not say our movie.
Well,
I
you
really
can.
do.
I mean,
I
or
really do love what my husband did with Telltale Heart. Like,
okay.
I love how he did it, and I love the nod to Hitchcock with
Okay.
the eye in the beginning, and like I know what all he was up to, and I'm probably biased because of that, but
Yeah.
that's my favorite. My second would be honestly the most recent Flanagan stuff was just great.
Yeah.
I thought it was fantastic. So
Right. Thad, your favorite
House.
movie? Oh,
Yeah. Does it? We talking adaptations or just Poe-ish?
oh, well, yeah, your
'Cause
interpretation.
Adaptations is there aren't really many adaptations that are
Good.
that are good and or close to the story.
Yeah.
So for adaptations, I would hate to say, but yeah, my Telltale Heart.
Okay.
For Poe-ish,
Yeah.
I would say Psycho,
Okay.
because it's Poe-ish. Any Hitchcock,
Mhm.
any like William Friedkin had a lot of Poe stuff in his there's a lot of Poe-ish
Yeah.
things. Like the
Oh,
Mike
yeah.
Flanagan series, any Mike, like even
Like
like
it's in
his other
everything
shows
Mike
like
Flanagan.
Midnight Mass, or they're all similar. They all have Poe kind of themes to it. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff out there that I kind of would be attracted to
Right.
because it has like a Poe-ish style
Mhm.
to it. But in terms of like adaptations, I haven't really seen very many. There was a good Cask of Amontillado that was on
It's in Spanish.
that was on PBS.
There's one in Spanish that's really good too.
John Hurd was in it.
Oh, John
And
Hurt's amazing.
it was in the 90s.
Okay.
And it was a pretty good adaptation.
All right. Fair enough.
It wasn't fantastic, but it was good.
So that, let's do clarify either movies that portrayed Poe himself fictionally or not. It could be a documentary too, I suppose, or an adaptation. Jeannie, how about you? Your favorite?
Well, the only one that I would even consider being close to being a favorite would be the Bela Lugosi Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Oh, nice.
Um, because
I love
other than Thad and Seasons movies adaptations that they've done, as far as if I just look at it from a theatrical, straight on interpretation of Poe's works as much as they could, that's the closest one that I would have as a favorite, because I'm going to be honest with you, I do not like movie adaptations of any written work. I've just never been a big fan of it. Because to me, I'm like, I think Thad said something about it earlier. I either like that they did it so close to the story, or I don't like it because they've gotten so far out the wazoo that you don't know what planet they're on,
Yeah.
and it just has a name that matches with it. So yeah, I'm gonna have to say Murders in the Rue Morgue with Bela Lugosi.
Okay. Ari, how about you? This
Well,
is an everyone question.
yeah.
Gotta.
I really liked your Raven. I thought you guys did a great job with the Raven.
Thank you.
But but really with adaptations, again, it's like with Poe, it's something that's so I almost don't want to see other people's adaptation. I like to see it in my head. Actually, you know what I
Yeah.
really do like in terms of adaptations are some of the old comics, like the Bernie Whites and the comics. Like they had them out in the Poe Fest this year. That was the exhibit that they had, and some of the ink work on the illustrations on those old comics is spectacular.
Yeah.
And
Did you see Stephen Smith's stuff?
oh, that
Or-
was great. That was great.
That
I
was
liked his stuff.
fantastic.
Yeah, I saw
He's
his the Pit and the Pendulum that he did
Yeah.
down in the catacombs there. He was amazing. I really liked his
That
stuff.
was remarkable.
I
Yeah.
wish I could have seen more, but we're in the booth while he's performing up on the
Mhm.
at the stage at the same time. You can't leave your
Oh, right. Yeah.
like we're all the way down the aisle and he's up on the main stage over there. But I did see the Pit and the Pendulum down in the catacombs below the church there, and that he did an excellent job.
He
Nice.
does the Black Cat, the Telltale Heart,
Yeah.
and the Raven as well.
Yeah, and he was a really
Word for
nice guy.
word.
really nice guy too.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Great.
And you know what, actually, what I did like about him was it is very true, you know, because he's reading it, like he's reading it word for word and he's acting it out. It's almost, you know, it's almost like not an adaptation. It's almost like a
Yeah, it's
you
a
know,
reading.
it's like listening to an audiobook, but with the person performing it
Right
in
there.
front of
Yeah,
you, because
live.
it's not you know, it's not something where they're, you know, he's trying to change or anything, but it's also, you know, no, his stuff was really good. I liked his stuff a lot.
All right, great. Carmen, how about you?
Um, I'm kind of glad I got to go last because this is a hard one for me. I've seen a lot of movies, TV shows, and a lot of things run together in my brain. And one of the things that probably left me very moved by it's more like kind of in the style of Stephen Smith is Vincent Price one man Poe show, and he did it live, but then there's a recorded version, and I got to watch it. And um, one of the stories that he did is never really talked about very much, and that's the Sphinx. And so it kind of gave me a new appreciation for that story. But he, you know, of course, he's phenomenal in every aspect of the word. And so when he did these, it was four shows that he did, or four stories he did. It was unbelievable. It was absolutely unbelievable. And then I love Thad and Season's Telltale Heart. It is fantastic.
Wonderful.
I wish
Oh,
I
look
could
at
teach it to be able to show it.
that.
So
And for me, I think the Pale Blue Eye, I don't know, that movie sticks in my head so much that I was really hoping that they would continue making like young Edgar Allan Poe movies, even if they're, well, and that's the thing too, is like how close can they even represent Edgar Allan Poe in his youth? But I loved it so much I wanted it to continue.
Maybe someday Stallone will get his Poe biopic he's been trying to get for
oh yeah.
his entire life before he dies, and maybe we'll get a good view of Poe as a child traveling to England and back, and
Yeah.
his first loves, and having Virginia send love notes to the girl he has a crush on down the street.
Right.
Maybe we'll get to see that someday if he
Maybe.
can forget that off the ground.
All right, you are going to a desert island and you can only take 3 poems or stories of Poe's with you.
Ooh.
And actually, since we've already been chatting for like 2 hours, I'm gonna just have you do one. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna take The Pit and the Pendulum. Shout it out.
Mine would be El Dorado.
Okay.
I think I've already said my favorite is The Bells.
Okay. And Jeannie, I chose to memorize El Dorado for high school and read it in front of the class. So that's close to my heart too. But Carmen, how about you?
I probably the Purloined Letter.
Okay. Season?
This is hard.
Yeah, I know it is.
I
Some of
would
these
probably take
questions are
Morella
fair.
because Morella is my favorite.
Okay.
That's a
I'm
great one.
gonna take the Black Cat.
The Black.
Although if I'm alone on a desert island, I don't know if I want to read that by myself. But that's probably
Might be scary. Read it during the
That
daylight.
would be depressing. That would be depressing.
That's an interesting one because there's so many of the elements, like there's elements that are similar to the Telltale Heart, and there's elements that are similar to the Cask of Amontillado,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There's like different bits and pieces from, you know,
It's
that
also
make
the one
their
I'm
way into
diving.
other ones.
Yeah, it's also the one I'm diving into right now,
Oh,
which is
nice.
so I'm the
Yeah.
most into it. You know, it's always whatever the one I'm reading the most. You know,
Yeah. And the Purloined Letter is my favorite of the DuPont stories.
Yeah, they're all so good, but I think that one, I don't know, I guess it's got a little bit more positive tone. I mean, I'm very much into true crime too. So I'm trying, like if I was going to be on a desert island, would I really want to bring murder with me? The answer is probably yes.
Right.
But the Purloined Letter is just so clever, and so it's like that's the one I'd have to bring, and I'd want a story rather than a poem, just because it's longer and I can, you know, dig
Yeah,
into
stay
it.
for it.
Yeah.
Season, where did Edgar's middle name come from?
His foster father, and actually when he would spell it out, he would spell it out Edgar A. Poe.
Mhm.
So the whole Allan thing came from Griswold,
Mhm.
actually, because he didn't like, once he really parted with John Allan, he didn't really spell it out. And so when I write it, often I say Edgar A. Poe because I'm like, that's what he would have preferred.
Oh, okay.
I don't think he would really honestly would like his entire body of work to be associated with someone who basically disowned him.
Right.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
Although it did help him get indoors, having the Allan name.
Yeah.
attached.
Mhm.
Yeah.
True.
All right, let's see. Ari, what street was Edgar born on?
I walked down it, but it's sad. Don't remember the name of it. I know that. Yes,
You know it in the back of your mind.
yes, I know because I know how to get. Yeah.
You
I,
can-
I think I remember, or if you want me to help,
Yeah,
I'm not
go
100%.
ahead. Go ahead.
Is it Carver, West Carver, maybe?
Yeah, Carver, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
okay.
have Carver. It might be West Carver, but
I wasn't sure of the West, but I remembered Carver.
all right. All right, so this is out of my own curiosity, and I don't know if I'm gonna put this in the show. Do you know who Matthew Franklin Whittier is?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to discuss it or no?
I
I know it's kind of out.
can't discuss it without saying something bad.
Yes, okay.
Mhm.
So I'd rather not
Okay.
poop on somebody. You
No,
know.
no,
It's
that's
like,
all right. And I'm actually probably just gonna cut that part out, but
yeah, you know,
but
you
it's
know.
it's interesting. Has anyone else encountered this person? Or do you recognize the name?
He'll reach out to you if he.
Yeah,
has
don't
Oh, he
worry.
already has. Or his current personification has.
Yeah, that's right.
All right.
The name sounds familiar, but I don't. He's not.
I'm
He's
guessing
not
you
come in
probably
contact with us, has he?
maybe.
Uh-uh.
Well,
If
next
not,
time,
if
next
not
Po
now.
Fest, next time we're tabling together at a booth, we'll explain it to you.
So
Oh, okay.
that's a great place where we can, if there's any myths about Edgar Allan Poe that you would like to blow up as quickly as possible, because we're heading into a very long chat. That Edgar Allan Poe did in fact write The Raven. No one else wrote The Raven. And many historians will agree with that. And we've talked about that Edgar Allan Poe was not an addict. Susan and Thad, you both brought that up. Anything else that you would like to share with the audience that the audience might think about Edgar Allan Poe, but is not true?
He was a man of science.
Okay.
Mhm.
He was very interested in science, and he did not suffer fools and quackery, would be the word. He did not, I mean, he busted up the whole Maisels chess player thing. I mean, there was a whole thing going on at one point where he showed that it was a fake.
He described the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Eureka.
Okay.
Yep.
He was also very good at ciphers and codes.
Yes.
And he was said to, there were only 2 ciphers that he could not solve,
Oh wow.
and they were solved. One was in the 90s and one was recently, and they were both solved by computers.
Yep.
So one of them I think was solved by a mathematician using a computer, and the other was, if I recall,
Yeah, I think so.
remember exactly, but something like that. Yeah.
Jeannie,
Yeah.
is there anything you would like to blow up?
He was not the alcoholic that everybody thought he was. He technically was allergic to alcohol. He was one of those, as we used to call the light drinkers. He couldn't take a lot. So, but I think a lot of people like to put that persona of him being a drug addict, an alcoholic, a perjurer, or a copyright stealer type of person type onto his persona because of either Griswold or just to make him more fantastical, I guess. But Poe was just like anybody else. He was a living, breathing person, that he had an excellent art, and stop trying to make him worse than what, because that's what I hate about the most is like everybody wants to try to find a way, I'm going to say, use the cancel culture thing on him. And I'm like, I don't see anything along that avenue. So that's just me. I'm just saying.
Oh, he
Just
also
let Poe
swam
be.
he swam 6 miles up the James River upstream when he was 15
Mhm.
years.
Nice.
Yeah, he's a really good. Yeah, because what wasn't he a
Yeah.
swimmer in college and
Yeah, and he could box too.
Yeah, he
yeah,
could
he was a
box. Yeah.
boxer. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's my take on it. So that's one thing.
So Ari, why don't you tell us why you think people should read Edgar Allan Poe's works?
Why I think they should read Edgar Allan Poe? Because it's awesome.
Yeah, I mean that's
Well, no,
that's
because
like my first answer because he's
I think
awesome.
there's a couple of things. I think that you know that a lot of times when we go back to the beginnings of things, right? We read people because they're important, right? Or we teach people because they're important because they did things, and those are important things to have, right? There is a chain of influence we were talking about before, and there were things like that, and he started so many things, but a lot of times, right, they don't hold up in the same way that Poe holds up. There's a timeless quality
Mhm.
to it. So he has both of those things, right? He's a really important writer in that he started a lot of these genres that we call genre fiction now.
Yeah.
They call it derogatorily. I hate this whole differentiation with genre fiction and
Oh yeah.
between genre fiction and literary fiction and all this stuff. Because if you go back, right, I mean, Homer was writing genre fiction, right? And this is like
Yeah.
at some point, right, um, Wuthering Heights is genre fiction, but that's just like, there's at some point, right? But at some point, it became actually it's really the modernists, but that's a whole other 2 hours that we could do another time.
Right.
But he, where we have the horror and the gothic, and to me they're two different things.
Oh
To me,
yeah.
gothic is closer to fantasy than certain kinds of horror. We have the poetry, we have the detective stuff, we have the science fiction stuff. We have all these things that come back to Poe, and he's really important. But at the same time, there's a timelessness to him that only a few other authors have, where it still works and it's still relevant and it's still like you want to put House of Usher on your Netflix series
Yeah.
because people will respond to that.
Mhm.
Whereas,
Mhm.
you don't necessarily want to do that with other old important writers. It doesn't transcend
Yeah.
in the same way. So like I'm trying to think, right, there's like Poe and Shakespeare and Jane Austen and like
Yeah, there are
a
a
few
few, yeah.
people like who transcend both aspects of it, where they remain, their work somehow remains relevant contemporarily and throughout history, and they're also really important people from history of literature, from a development of literature perspective. um and he's unique. Like I could think of maybe 7 to 10 people like that in
Yeah.
all of history. So
Yeah.
that would be one reason I think it's important.
How about you, Carmen? Is there anything you'd like to add to that about why people should read Poe?
Um, kind of like with what Ari just said, and kind of like why we do our podcast. He is a true Renaissance man when you think about all of the things that he has influenced with all of the different areas of horror, literature, poetry, science fiction, surrealism. I mean, all of these different things and criticisms. And there's so many layers within him and what he gave us in such a short time period that he's very profound. I always say he's kind of like the Da Vinci of the mid 1800s, because he left us a legacy that we can continue. And I truly believe that people will be reading Poe, talking about Poe way after we're gone.
Oh yeah. And watching the movies. They'll be
Yes.
watching more Poe movies and
Yeah.
yeah. So now's the time. Share a little snippet if you want to tell the audience how they can find you and what you want to share about your work. So take it away. 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe. How can people find out more?
Well, we have our website, and it's 6degreesofpoe.com, and it's the number 6 or just the actual 6 or spelling it out. Let's see, Facebook, the 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, and also X. I've gotten away from saying Twitter, but 6 Degrees of Poe. And then Jeannie, I'll let you talk about YouTube.
We have our YouTube channel, which is called Poe Unplugged. It started out as our Unbook Clubs channel, but we have all different aspects on it where we have for Poe places. We have I have a little segment I'm trying to get started of time talks, talking about different things from history and how, maybe they relate to Poe or Poe's works. So then we're basically on all major podcast platforms. You can find us everywhere. It's just 6 Degrees of Edgar Allan Poe, or not 6 Degrees of Edgar, just 6 Degrees of Poe.
Okay.
And it's just us.
And you said
Yeah.
your YouTube is Poe Unplugged?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Poe
Yes.
Unplugged.
Yes.
That's our YouTube channel. So it's where we have pretty much all our visuals that you can
Yeah.
see with our interviews, our book clubs, we do our podcasts sometimes on Zoom. So we put our podcasts on there, not just for audio, but audio and video.
Yeah.
So
Jeannie's time travels, my On the
Mhm.
Road with Carmen, and we've also started Words on Wednesday, and it's a Poe word out of a story, define it,
Oh yeah.
visualize it,
Yeah.
read a quote from it, and it's just little shorts that
And
just to teach
he made up words too, words that
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
exist.
Tintibulation, yes. That was our very first word. So,
Yes.
but yeah, that's the teachers in us. We have to continue to teach vocabulary, but
Yes.
yeah, find us online on social media.
Okay.
The only thing we're not on is Instagram, so don't try to
That's
find
all
us there.
right.
I'm
Okay.
yeah, but that's where you can find us.
Yes.
Just check us out.
AA Rubin, Ari Rubin, where can people find out more about what you do?
Okay, so I am on a number of social media platforms which seem to be growing by the day. It used to be
gosh, yeah.
just the way it used to just be Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Now we got
Oh, yeah.
Threads, Blue Sky, Mastodon, whatever. So I may TikTok. What I may not be on every one that you're on, but if I am on any of them, I am at the Surreal Ari. The
Surreal Ari.
The Surreal Ari. Yeah.
Okay.
So like back it's an old joke. Back in the day, people used to try to get people who were famous' names, and then the people who were famous would say, they were the real Edgar Allan Poe.
Oh yeah,
right,
yeah.
right, or Neil Gaiman still has Gaiman Neil
Right.
himself, or Mark Hamill has one like that, Hamill himself, right? There were different variations of that, but one of them was like, you'd be the real Edgar Allan Poe. So I was like, it'd be the real Ari, it'd be the surreal Ari. So yes,
Ari.
the surreal Ari. So
Right.
yeah, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Mastodon,
Website?
Blue Sky, yes, and website just www.aaRubin.com.
All right, great.
And I have a blog there. I write about
You
writing
do?
and things like that as well.
Wonderful. All right. And Thad and Season, Poe Movies. How can people find out more about you guys and what you're doing?
We're on we're Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube primarily.
And it's
Yeah.
all under Poe Movies.
Well, yeah, we're also on Twitter and Threads, but the most important one that we're on is YouTube. That's where our primary focus is.
So,
Okay.
the best content is on it.
So we
All
have
right.
really good. We have a lot of content on there. That's where our films. You can watch our films on YouTube at no cost. So that's where you find us, and the handle is @PoeMovies.
@Poe Movies.
@PoeMovies.
Wonderful. Well, it's getting pretty late for you guys. It's only 7:18 for me, but I believe some of you are on the East Coast, so that's after 10. And I think Jeannie and Carmen, you're central, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining me. I know there's so much more we could talk about regarding Poe, but for the audience, if you want to find out more about Poe, check out all of these folks and their websites and their channels And we'll see you guys, and I'll contact you when everything goes out. I'm primarily the show is on YouTube, but I usually reach out through Facebook, as you've noticed. But I'll also contact you through email and let you know when everything's going out and tag you and all that good stuff.
All right.
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
Thank
so
you for
much for
having
joining
us.
me.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
Good night.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.